Trevor Miller. I've been a chiropractor for 15 years now. I can't believe it. Every time I think about that, I'm like, really? 15 years? You're right there with me. And so today, I want to talk about nutrition, and more specifically, why food is a drug. Because for me to get to where I am today, it really has been a journey. I've been as heavy as 270 pounds. I suffered from high blood pressure. I definitely was what they call insulin resistant, borderline diabetic. I would monitor myself in secrecy. I don't think I ever told her how close I was. But those things are things that I was fighting with. And not only was I fighting with them, but then I looked like this. And so why did I do this? Why did I change my diet? Why did I change getting exercise? And why did I do all this? Well, first and foremost, it begins with these two right here. My two girls are special needs. They cannot have or tolerate red or yellow dye. They don't tolerate gluten very well. They're on very special diets, and most of that research was actually done by Kristine. And she figured a lot of that out, and then we started to change half of the family, and then we kind of lived our own lives and would do our own things anyway. But I got tired of being the doctor that said, hey, you're overweight. You need to drop 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. And then here I was, 70 pounds overweight. And, you know, it's kind of like going to the medical doctor and him telling you not to smoke, and then when you leave, where do you see him outside smoking a cigarette? And you're like, okay, if you can do it, why can't I? So this was taken, I need to look the dates up on these, but these pictures are about 4 years apart, I think. Is that about right? This was taken this year when we were on vacation, when we did the Cancun 70.3 Ironman. This was taken at the Community Foundation dinner. And I think that was 3 years ago. So as we talk about this and look at this, it's not vanity. What looks healthier? And so, of course, the picture on the left looks healthier. When you look at somebody that has the double chin, see how the rosacea is in the cheeks, those are all telltale signs of high blood pressure. And something I'll go through later, but I'll just preface it right now. For every extra pound of fat that you have on your body has 65,000 miles of blood vessels. 1 extra pound of fat increases that by 200 miles. So I'm pumping a lot harder over here than I am over here. As she is too.
Mine's just makeup.
So the question you have to ask yourself, especially when you're going into this and we're talking about a lifestyle change, is what is true health? Is true health just the absence of pain? Just the absence of sickness? And for me, I don't believe that's true health. I believe true health is being able to go out and play as hard as I want to play and not get hurt. Or if I get hurt, I heal in an appropriate amount of time. A lot of people don't realize that when you have poor nutrition and you are eating wrong and you are what they call pro-inflammatory, when you're doing all of this, it slows your healing time down. And so some people that come in for chiropractic care, I can adjust some people 1, 2, 3 times and their pain is gone. And then the other person I can adjust 12 times and their pain still lingers. And a lot of that, then we have to sit down, because a lot of that we can talk about, and it's from nutrition. Everybody get these two red? Okay. So something that a lot of people want to use as a cop-out is my genetics. You know, my father had high blood pressure, my mother had high blood pressure, everybody in my family had high blood pressure. And so this was an experiment to see if genetics truly was the answer. So now what they're finding is genetics no longer is the hard wiring. Genetics is software that can be written and rewritten. So what you see here is an agouti mouse. The mouse is actually genetically modified to not methylate. It does not use folic acid. Folic acid is what the body uses to suppress DNA expression. The body knows when a bad segment of DNA or where a bad segment of DNA is, and so it keeps it suppressed by using folic acid or methylation, methylating factors. What they did was they took the agouti mouse and they gave the mother methylating factors. It had zinc, methionine, choline, folate, B12. When the mother that had high risk of cancer, diabetes, obesity, and a reduced lifespan gave birth to the offspring, it was normal. It wasn't white. It had a lower risk of cancer, diabetes, obesity, and it actually lived longer than what was supposed to happen just because they gave it folic acid. And so the environment inside the mother affected the baby. When they did this, that was the time that it said it's no longer your genetics that matter. I mean, it does to a certain extent, but what you do to your genetics. They actually say up to age 25, you're an expression of your genes. After age 25, you're an expression of what you've done to your genes. So, as we look at foods, and I say food is a drug, here we'll start to get into it. Think of yourself as a car. So if you have a high-performance vehicle, are you going to put cheap gasoline in it? No, because it's going to not contain and not run at all. So why would you do that to your body, which is a higher functioning piece of machinery? We can't rebuild it, we can't replace it. We can take parts out, we can give you some synthetic parts, but nothing's ever as good as the original. So when you start to take your body and you put in refined foods, and we are looking at McDonald's, Sunrise Cafe, there are three things that sell in restaurants: sugar, salt, and fat. That's what sells. If you go to a mainstream restaurant, that's what they sell you. Those are considered refined foods, fast foods. They have lots of simple sugars. So let's talk about simple sugars for a second. A candy bar, simple sugar. A candy bar will go into your system, increase plasma glucose, which will stimulate insulin, which brings in more insulin into the body. And don't get afraid here, I'm not going to go through the whole web here. We're just going to go through one portion of it. But it increases insulin. Insulin's job is to push glucose into the cell. So your body can then put it into the Krebs cycle and produce energy. Okay, when you use simple sugars, think of white refined sugar. Simple sugars are like throwing gas on the fire. If you use, and I hate to say sugar in the raw or fruit sugars or things of that nature, that's more like diesel fuel because it's kind of bound by fiber and it doesn't hit the body real fast and doesn't hit the body as hard as white refined sugar. Insulin is a very slow acting hormone. It lasts in the body for about 3 hours. Whereas a Snickers bar lasts in the body about 45 minutes. So what happens when that Snicker bar is gone? Well, then all of a sudden you have downregulation and you get hypoglycemia. When I say downregulation, the body starts to slow down and you start to get cravings because all of a sudden there's no sugar in the bloodstream to make the body run. So then you get hypoglycemia, and those are the blahs. So as you get wore down, then you get hungry and the body says, hey, I need something to eat. And that's when they go get something else. And then they're good for about 30 to 45 minutes and you're up and you're going and you're running. And then a little bit later, all of a sudden, it drops down again. So while you're awake, you can actually get something to eat. What happens when you go to sleep and you're sleeping and you have had simple sugars right before you go to bed? Do you know what happens? So as you're sleeping, the body can't tell you that you're hungry to wake up. The body actually taps the adrenal glands, and that's where we start to get adrenal stress, taps the adrenal glands to produce what are called glucocorticoids. This is a little deep, but basically it's epinephrine and norepinephrine that the body has you produce. That brings your body's system up. When does it do that? Usually right around the 1 to 3 o'clock area. So if you ever hear of somebody saying that they get up and it's about 1 to 3 o'clock in the morning and they're ready to go and they'll do something and they go back to sleep and they wake up in the morning and they're just dragging. Why is that? It's because they're in this hypoglycemic adrenal stress state of health that keeps them going very, very high or very, very low. And that also starts to get to be a problem to the body because you keep on hitting insulin. You keep on tapping the pancreas to produce more and more insulin. And then what happens is your body starts to get desensitized to the insulin. And that's what they call insulin resistance. So once you hit the glucocorticoids, this is always fun. Your body will use the glucose for energy, and that's why you're up. Not only does epinephrine and norepinephrine break down into glucose to give you energy, but it also causes you to go what they call sympathetic. You go into a fight or flight syndrome. That's where you're ready to go because that's what those do. So once you break down that out of glucose, you still have cortisol left over. How many of you guys have heard of cortisol? What does cortisol do? Makes you gain weight. Hips, thighs, stomach. You also, but you cannot take something to block cortisol. Cortisol is very important in the morning because you get a small shot of cortisol in the morning to get you up, to get you going. These people that take, I forget, it was a big rage about a year or two ago on television, and it was a cortisol blocker. And they would take that for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and they would lose weight, but then all of a sudden they were just crazy tired. And it's because they could not any longer get the sympathetic nervous system stimulated to keep going. So we're over here, we're stimulating the glucocorticoids. We start to inhibit basically iodine in the body, and that decreases T3 and T4, which causes you to decrease mitochondrial function. You start to get very fatigued. This is about the time that you go into the doctor and you say, I'm tired, I'm gaining weight, I have no reason to do this. Well, what's going on? And what do they test you for? Thyroid problems. And so that's exactly what happens. And then all of a sudden they diagnose you as having hypothyroidism. And so they start to treat you right here for hypothyroidism. But the problem starts with refined foods and refined sugars. Because you're putting in something into the body that disappears very quickly but has a very profound effect on the body by increasing hormones like insulin. And so nutrition is probably the most profound drug that there is. If you are eating fake foods, let's go on. Any questions about this? Once again, right here they're showing you that as you increase body fat, you get 200 miles of blood vessels per 1 pound of fat. That increases fluid dynamics. What's it easier to suck water through? A straw that's this long or a straw that's this long? So when you increase body fat, you increase fluid dynamics, which gives you increased blood pressure, which predisposes you to diabetes. That's one of the things of diabetes. And it just kind of goes around in a circle. It exacerbates, And it's a positive feedback loop. So everybody's heard of the fad diets or Atkins Zone, South Beach, and Weight Watchers. I'm not here to talk about weight loss because these are for weight loss. I am here to warn you about these because now Weight Watchers will discuss proper eating habits, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
But a lot of their foods, if you look at their foods, are very high in preservatives.
Prepackaged.
Yeah, their prepackaged foods are very high in preservatives. And I think they do substitute some sugars. So anytime you use artificial foods and flavorings, your body can't process those. Okay? So the solution to pollution in the body is dilution. The only thing that the body can do to get out these artificial, ice cream, polysorbate 80, whatever. The only thing the body can do to get rid of these things is make you retain water. So you will retain water. The only way to flush it out is to drink more water to get it out of your system. You have to excrete it through the skin, fecal material, or urine. One of the three. Those are the only three ways you got. Atkins goes very high protein. Generally on Atkins, you go very high protein, you start to eventually sacrifice muscle, your own muscle, and then you have to be very, very cautious of the kidneys because you hammer the kidneys on this stuff. So it's a balanced diet. It's just like they always say, a well-balanced meal. Talk about Zone. Zone talks about eicosanoids, and they want to control hormones and everything else, which is very, very good. Once again, look at a Zone bar. It's chock full of artificial sweeteners and artificial flavors, and that's just not healthy for the body. So I'm not talking about losing weight, because every one of these will help you lose weight. But if you do nutrition the way that you were supposed to do nutrition, and you get just a moderate amount of exercise, weight comes off automatically. And I can show you that. Here it is. So those are why the fad diets are not always necessarily the way to go to be healthy. To lose weight, yes. To be healthy, no. So let's talk a minute about glycemic load versus glycemic index. A lot of the fad diets try to beat glycemic load. They try to control the insulin response. That's why they use artificial flavors and sweeteners and stuff like that, because you don't quite get hit by the insulin response so much. But everybody knows that a banana is really, really sweet. Diabetics are told to avoid bananas in some cases because of how sweet they are. The problem with that is the sweetness in a banana is actually bound by fiber. So its load on the body is not that great. It's better to eat a banana than it is to eat a Snickers bar, or any candy bar for that matter of fact. When we look at the glycemic index takes a piece of food, fruit, vegetable, whatever, and it tells you how much sugar is in that. That's an interesting piece of literature, but more research has shown that it's more important to know what the glycemic load is, how hard it hits the body, because that's what will stimulate the insulin response. That's what will cause you to go hypoglycemic. That's what will give you the problems, is the amount of glycemic load that it puts on your body. Any questions about that? If you want charts, there you go. These websites give you extensive lists on the foods and on what foods do what and how much sugar's in them, how hard they hit the body, how quickly they dissipate. All very, very, very important material. One more thing let me talk to you about as you start to look at more natural foods and try to work into a lifestyle where you use nutrition and good nutrition to control your hormones, because that's the way it's meant to be and it's fairly easy to do, the first thing to start with is reading your boxes. And anything that says high fructose corn syrup, HFSC, stay away from it. If fruit sugar and those things are diesel fuel and white refined sugar is, gasoline or rocket fuel, high fructose corn syrup is the atomic bomb of sugars. It is to be avoided at all costs. And you can go onto the high fructose corn syrup website and they'll tell you it's a naturally derived sugar and this, that, and the other. And when taken in moderation, it doesn't hurt you. That's true. But go look at your labels. You are microdosing that stuff in everything. A McDonald's hamburger, cheeseburger, has it in the bun, in the ketchup, in the pickles, and as a filler in the meat. So how much is too much? I'm pretty sure that's too much. And so you get dosed with that stuff constantly. All your sodas pretty much are sweetened with that stuff. Stay away.